way in which the state has decided to see itself. In the early 90s, after the demolition of the Babri Masjid and after the opening up of the free market, it's really interesting that preparations had already started to make India a police and a military state. If you look at the recruitment, the amount of police and security apparatus that has been recruited, the budgets that have been allocated, and what is going on. Why is that so? I mean, the special cell or the Supreme Court or the trial courts or the people in jail could not do what they are doing unless society is also part of allowing this. So one of the things that that we haven't spoken about enough in this meeting is the role of specific journalists in the media right from the beginning. How they planted stories, how the special cell runs particular journalists. For example, we wrote, a lot of us worked quite a lot on the Parliament attack case which Pancholi Sahab and Nandita Haksar fought for S.A.R. Gilani. When the Supreme Court gave a judgment on Afzal, it actually said that we have no evidence to prove that he belongs to a terrorist group. But in order to satisfy the collective conscience of society, we are sentencing him to death. They said it in black and white. In a final Supreme Court judgment, they said it. There was outrage from some quarters, but even today, when so many of us have pointed out, in the same way that JTSA has, bit by bit, how the lies were built up, how the press had, the media had planted stories, how the custodial confessions were extracted, how, for example, in the case of Afzal, they had many confessions and they would pull out whichever one suited them at whichever time, and they used it. But what I want to say is that when finally, about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, they decided that they were actually going to hang Afzal, some of us brought out a book called The Strange Case of the Parliament Attack and mentioned all of this, including the judgment, the Supreme Court judgment, which actually set aside Afzal's confession in the police station. Mind you, now this is 7 years after the trial is over and so on. The Supreme Court said you cannot use a confession as evidence and set it aside. What does the media do? 7 years later, a secular channel runs that old confession video, where Afzal is confessing. It doesn't say it's a confession. It doesn't say it's in police custody. It just makes out that, oh, he suddenly decided to confess because he's dying to be hanged tomorrow, And underneath it says, the SMSs are starting. Usko boti mein kaat ke kutton ko khila do, ya Lal Chowk mein phansi do. I mean, we don't need a Sharia state. We've got the people going on all this false news. And the Supreme Court has said you should hang him because of the collective conscience of society. And the media is creating that collective conscience. It so happens that that journalist who actually produced this 5-year-old confession video from the special cell had been working in the Hindustan Times earlier. She had been exposed for lying in Iftikhar Gilani's case, in S.A.R. Gilani's case, in case after case of lying. What happened to her? She got promoted to a secular channel. She became a journalist in a secular channel. She got a raise and she got an opportunity to do much more dangerous stuff, and it's still going on, that, So there's a collusion at the level of the courts, of the media, of all of this. Interestingly, 4 years ago to now, today maybe, I remember going to the special cell, to the gates of the special cell with 2 lawyers after the boys were arrested and held in there. Just, you know, we just heard that it happened and we rushed there and said, you know, they have a right to legal opinion. You have to let us in. One of them was a senior lawyer. The special cell police, if you see them, they look like genetically modified human beings. They just laughed at us, you know, just get out of here. There's no question of them having any lawyer meet them. But what I want to say is one of the journalists who worked with us on the Parliament attack issue, who knew very well this story about the fact that you cannot produce custodial confessions as evidence. He left Tehelka and joined India Today. India Today has a different agenda, so the same man who knows the law wrote a cover story about the boys in Batla House saying, I just smuggled myself into the police station, you know, while the mob was around. And each of those boys with their evil, you know, hooded eyes and their wicked grimaces confessed to him that they had actually done it. And this was the cover story of the magazine with the biggest circulation, you know. So the way in which the stories are planted now, the same thing is happening. I mean, there are some of us, I sometimes wonder, you know, when I'm here in Jamia, then I'm supposed to speak about what has happened to young Muslims or young Kashmiris who are being killed, who are being tortured, who are being wrongfully detained. When I'm in, say, Hyderabad, then I talk about the Adivasis. But the fact is, you know, do we see a pattern here? Or, I mean, it's not necessary. I'm not saying everybody has to be a missionary and care about everybody else. But if we want to understand what's going on politically, if we want to move this beyond just complaining, beyond just petitioning, beyond just feeling sorry for ourselves and hoping that, you know, some sort of miracle will happen and nice people will come to government or nice lawyers will represent us. This is all very deliberate. It's all being done to keep us busy. You know, imagine all the young law students have to get together. When these boys are put away, then, you know, you see their papers. In Kashmir, everybody has a bag with papers, you know, of how their son was killed, how you went to this place, how so-and-so disappeared, how, I mean, after they've been killed and disappeared, there's no mercy here. You know, no amount of petitioning or being noble is going to get us a solution to this, you know. So I think we should look very clearly at what are the lines along which this brutality is running, you know. Because if we are going to look at it as a Hindu versus Muslim problem, then tomorrow they'll turn around and say, what's happening in Pakistan? Are lawyers willing to defend people there in the minority or about blasphemy or whatever? It's not. It's not about Hindu and Muslim. It's about power. It's about how are you going to keep people distracted? What excuse can we have to have an increasingly militarized state? It's true. I mean, what's the difference? I mean, Batla House has happened under the Congress watch, but in the election they are going to campaign as a secular party. So let's just, I mean, I've said this many times, so I hate repeating myself, but I just want to put it down to you as a simple idea that in the early 90s, actually in the late 80s, when India became changed from being a non-aligned country